The imposing figure of combat instructor Kthar filled the briefing room with his presence before he even spoke. His draconian features, all scales and angles, seemed carved from dark stone as he surveyed the class of interspecies cadets. The overhead lights gleamed off his ceremonial combat armor, polished to military perfection. "Attention, cadets!" Kthar's voice reverberated through the room, instantly silencing the low murmur of conversations. "In precisely 2 weeks, you will face the Crucible Challenge, the most comprehensive combat assessment in your training cycle." A wave of tension swept through the room. The Crucible was legendary among the students of the Xylos Interstellar Alliance Academy. More than just a test, it was a rite of passage that separated the true warriors from the pretenders. The Crucible will assess your proficiency with standard Alliance heavy combat armor in varying combat scenarios. Kthar continued, his reptilian eyes scanning the room. You will navigate urban ruins, synthetic jungles, and mountainous terrain. You will face drone attackers, environmental hazards, and tactical puzzles. Your performance will significantly impact your final standing. In the middle row of the assembly hall, Cadet Alex Ryder, known as REX in the Academy's records, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. At 19, he was one of the younger students and the only human in his combat class. Unlike many of his classmates, he didn't possess natural armor, extra limbs, or enhanced musculature. What he lacked in physical advantages, he tried to compensate for with determination and observational skills. Some of you have shown remarkable improvement with your armor proficiency. Kthar's gaze lingered momentarily on a group of clack cadets, their exoskeletons gleaming with pride. Others, his eyes drifted toward Rex, continued to struggle with basic maneuvers. A few suppressed chuckles rippled through the room. Rex maintained a neutral expression, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The standard Alliance combat armor had been his nemesis since day one. While designed to be universally adaptable to most species, the reality was that it favored the naturally stronger races. For Rex, the heavy plating felt like wearing a prison that negated his natural agility and quick reflexes, the very advantages that humans from Earth, classified as a death world, possessed. After the briefing, as cadets filed out of the room, Rex found himself shoulder-checked by a passing clack student. Varkos, the self-appointed leader of a group of physically imposing cadets, loomed over Rex, mandibles clicking in what passed for amusement among his kind. "Looking forward to watching you clank around the Crucible, Deathworlder," Varkos said, his voice a chittering rumble. "Maybe they'll let you switch to kitchen duty after you fail. I hear humans are good at serving others." His companions, 2 other clack and a stone-skinned Gravalian, laughed on cue. Rex held Varkos's compound gaze for a moment before stepping aside without a word. "Nothing to say? Smart. Save your breath for when you're gasping in that armor," Varkos called after him as Rex walked away. As the corridor emptied, Rex found himself alone with his thoughts and growing dread. The previous armor training sessions had been exercises in humiliation. While others moved with relative ease, Rex struggled with the weight distribution and power assist systems that seemed calibrated for anything but human physiology. His scores were consistently at the bottom of the class. Trying to become invisible, Cadet Ryder? Rex turned to find Lyra, a Xyloshan student, standing nearby. Her slender form and iridescent skin gave her an ethereal quality, but Rex knew better than to mistake her delicate appearance for weakness. Xyloshans were renowned for their incredible speed and flexibility. "Just thinking about the Crucible," Rex admitted. Lyra tilted her head, large almond-shaped eyes studying him. "You're worried about the armor." It wasn't a question. Everyone knew about Rex's struggles. "I've been practicing, but—" He shrugged. "But the armor wasn't designed with humans in mind," Lyra finished. "It's not exactly a secret. Tell that to Kthar." According to him, standard equipment exists to standardize performance. Rex mimicked the instructor's deep, authoritative tone. Lyra's expression, though alien, conveyed sympathy. "Perhaps there are other approaches you haven't considered." Before Rex could ask what she meant, she glided away, leaving him puzzled. "Other approaches?" The Academy regulations were clear. All combat assessments required standard combat armor. There were no exceptions, no alternatives. That evening, alone in his quarters, Rex pulled up the recording of his last armor training session. The footage was painful to watch. While other students leaped over obstacles and engaged target drones with precision, Rex moved like a malfunctioning maintenance robot. He was too slow, too stiff, his natural reflexes dampened by the armor systems. "Computer, show me the crucible layout," he commanded. A holographic display materialized, showing a complex obstacle course with various terrain types. Rex studied it carefully, his mind racing. The standard approach with armor would be to power through obstacles, rely on the armor's strength enhancements for climbing, and use its protective capabilities to withstand attacks. But what if? An idea began to form. A ridiculous, desperate, possibly suicidal idea. He dismissed the hologram and pulled up the Academy regulations instead. He spent hours reading the fine print, searching for any loophole, any precedent. The next morning, Rex approached his first class with dark circles under his eyes, but a newfound sense of purpose. As he entered the tactical theory classroom, he noticed a large Orbekian student being harassed in the corner by Varkos and his crew. The Orbekian, Gron, was known for his gentle nature despite his imposing size, a quality that made him a favorite target. "I believe I requested your tactical analysis homework," Boulder Brain, Varkos was saying, his mandibles spread in an intimidating display. Gron hunched his massive shoulders. "I worked hard on that assignment. And now you'll work hard on mine too," Varkos clicked. "Unless you want another accident in combat training." Rex had seen enough. Without thinking, he stepped between them. "Back off, Varkos. Find someone your own size to intimidate. Though I guess that would still make you the smallest one in the conversation." The Clack-S compound eyes narrowed. "Look who learned to speak. The Deathworlder wants to play hero." He leaned closer to Rex. "When your kind joined the Alliance, we expected warriors, not weaklings who can barely stand in combat armor." "Give Gron back his work," Rex said evenly. For a tense moment, it seemed Varkos might escalate the situation, but the arrival of their instructor defused the confrontation. As they took their seats, Gron mumbled a quiet thanks to Rex, who nodded in acknowledgement. That night, after his regular classes and mandatory armor training, another dismal performance, Rex made his way to a seldom-used simulation chamber in the lower levels of the Academy. He discovered it during his late-night exploration of the facility schematics, a slightly outdated training room that was scheduled for upgrades but hadn't yet been decommissioned. After ensuring no one had followed him, Rex activated the simulation. "Computer, recreate Crucible Challenge environment, authorization writer, S7. The room transformed into the first section of the Crucible, an urban ruin with collapsed buildings, debris-strewn streets, and multiple levels. Perfect for his experiment. Rex stood in the center, wearing only his basic training uniform instead of the combat armor. Begin simulation, level 7 difficulty. The warning beep gave him 3 seconds before training drones materialized and the exercise began. Without the encumbrance of the armor, Rex felt almost weightless. As the first drone targeted him, he moved on pure instinct, ducking, rolling, and using the environment to his advantage. After years of living on Earth, a high-gravity world with environmental challenges that had shaped human evolution, Rex's reflexes and physical capabilities were actually exceptional by galactic standards. The problem wasn't that he was weak. It was that the armor negated his natural advantages. For 2 hours, Rex trained, pushing himself to the limit. Without armor, he could leap across gaps, squeeze through narrow spaces, and outmaneuver the drones in ways that would be impossible in the bulky combat suit. He felt alive, capable, and for the first time since joining the Academy, confident in his abilities. As he finished the session, breathing hard but exhilarated, a voice from the entrance startled him. "Interesting approach, Cadet Rider." Rex spun around to find Lyra, standing in the doorway, her slender form silhouetted against the corridor lights. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered, suddenly aware of how his unauthorized training might appear. Lyra stepped into the room, the door closing behind her. It looks like you're training without armor for a challenge that explicitly requires armor. Rex winced. Are you going to report me? To his surprise, Lyra's features arranged themselves into what he recognized as a smile. Report you for what? For finding a solution to a problem? For thinking differently? She moved closer, observing the simulation readouts. Your performance metrics are impressive. Thanks, but they won't matter. In the actual crucible, I'll be back in that mobile coffin they call armor. Lyra's gaze was penetrating. Will you? The regulations are clear. Standard combat armor is required. Regulations can be interpreted, Lyra said. But more importantly, you've discovered something about yourself. You move like a Xylotian, no, differently, but with similar principles. Your species evolved on a high-gravity death planet. You possess natural abilities the Academy's standardized approach fails to recognize. Rex considered her words. Even if that's true, Cthar would never allow it. Perhaps not willingly, Lyra conceded. But sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Over the next 2 weeks, Rex spent every free moment in the simulation room, honing his armorless combat style. Lyra occasionally joined him, offering insights from her own training traditions that emphasize speed and precision over brute force. She showed him how to move more efficiently in zero-G environments and how to use momentum rather than strength to overcome obstacles. Why are you helping me? Rex asked her one evening as they sat recovering from a particularly intense session. Lyra's luminescent skin pulsed gently. Because diversity strengthens the alliance, even if some fail to see it. Your people joined only 30 years ago, a blink in galactic time. The systems haven't adapted to you yet, but they must, or we all lose valuable perspectives. She paused. Also, Varkos and his friends are insufferable, and watching you succeed would be deeply satisfying. Rex laughed, then grew serious. Even if I master this approach, there's no guarantee they'll let me complete the crucible without armor. It would be a direct challenge to Academy protocol. True, Lyra agreed. But sometimes protocols need challenging. The question is whether you're willing to take that risk. During his regular armor training sessions, Rex continued to perform poorly, albeit with slightly less catastrophic results. This maintained the facade that he was struggling, but trying to improve through conventional means. Cthar remained unimpressed, occasionally singling Rex out for remedial guidance that consisted mainly of repeating instructions more loudly. After one such session, Cthar held Rex back. A moment, Cadet Rider. Rex stood at attention, trying not to show his exhaustion after 2 hours in the armor. Your performance remains substandard, Cthar stated bluntly. The crucible approaches, and you are not ready. I'm doing my best, sir, Rex responded automatically. Are you? Cthar's reptilian features hardened. I've reviewed your academic records. Your tactical theory scores are exemplary. Your non-combat physical assessments are above average. Yet in armor, you move like a sedated Jovian slug. Rex remained silent, unsure how to respond. Cthar circled him slowly. The Academy does not expend resources on those who cannot contribute effectively to the Alliance. Perhaps a career in tactical analysis or logistics would better suit your limitations. The implied suggestion that Rex should withdraw from combat training struck like a physical blow. This was what he had feared since arriving, that he would be deemed unsuitable for frontline service because he didn't fit the standardized combat model. Sir, I respectfully request the opportunity to complete the crucible before any decisions are made, Rex said, maintaining his composure. Cthar stared at him for a long moment. Granted, but understand this, Cadet. The crucible does not merely test skills, it reveals character. Failure there would be definitive. As Rex left, he passed Dr. Eris Thorne, another human and one of the few Earthborn instructors at the Academy. The older man nodded slightly, a gesture that might have been encouragement. Later that evening, as Rex was studying the detailed schematics of the crucible one final time, his door chimed. Enter, he called, quickly switching his display to a tactical theory assignment. Dr. Thorne stepped in, his weathered face reflecting the decades he'd spent in space. As a xenobiologist and combat tactician, he was one of the most respected human figures in the Alliance scientific community. Cadet Ryder, he acknowledged with a nod. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Dr. Thorne. What can I do for you? Thorne glanced around the small room, noting the organized efficiency typical of military quarters. I'm conducting research on human adaptation to Alliance training methodologies. Your perspective would be valuable. Rex recognized the pretext for what it was, but played along. Of course, sir. Thorne sat in the room's only chair while Rex perched on the edge of his bed. How are you finding the standard combat armor, Cadet? Challenging, sir. Rex answered diplomatically. Thorne nodded. Many of us do. Humans evolved for endurance, speed, and adaptability, not to be tanks. The armor was designed by and for species with very different biomechanical principles. Rex leaned forward slightly. Sir, if that's the case, why does the Alliance insist on standardization that clearly disadvantages certain species? Bureaucratic inertia, Thorne replied with a hint of a smile. Large organizations change slowly, particularly military ones with traditions spanning centuries. The armor works well enough for most member species, and the exceptions are statistically insignificant. Like humans, Rex said flatly. Like humans, Thorne agreed. Though I would argue we are anything but insignificant. He fixed Rex with a penetrating gaze. The history of our species is defined by adaptation, Cadet Ryder. When the rules don't work for us, we don't simply fail, we change the rules. Rex felt a chill. Did Thorne somehow know about his secret training? The older man stood to leave, but paused at the door. The Crucible is designed to test a cadet's ability to overcome obstacles using all available resources. Remember that all available resources is a broader category than many assume. He nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes, the rules are created to be broken by those with enough courage and vision to see beyond them. With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving Rex both encouraged and unnerved. The day of the Crucible arrived with a palpable tension throughout the academy. Cadets gathered in the mess hall that morning in unusual silence, each contemplating the challenge ahead. Rex entered to find Varkos and his crew already there, holding court at their usual table. Ah, here comes our Deathworlder, Varkos called out, mandibles spread in mockery. Ready for your final performance? I've heard the kitchen staff is already preparing a spot for you. Rex ignored him, filling his tray with a protein-heavy breakfast. As he looked for a seat, Gron waved him over to a table where he sat with Lyra. Don't listen to them, Gron rumbled as Rex sat down. Varkos is just worried you might surprise everyone. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Rex said, managing a smile. Lyra studied him intently. You seem different today. Calmer. Rex shrugged, careful not to give anything away. No point in stressing about what I can't change. Indeed, she agreed, though her knowing look suggested she sensed there was more to his composure. 2 hours later, all cadets assembled at the entrance to the Crucible arena. The massive facility had been reconfigured to match the announced parameters. Urban ruins transitioning to synthetic jungle and then to mountainous terrain, all filled with combat drones, environmental hazards, and tactical challenges. Kthar stood before them, resplendent in his instructor's armor. Cadets, the Crucible before you will test not just your physical abilities, but your tactical thinking, adaptability, and courage under fire. You will enter individually at 2-minute intervals. Your performance will be monitored and scored according to Academy standards. His gaze swept over the assembled students, lingering momentarily on Rex. I remind you that standard combat armor is mandatory for this assessment. Any attempt to modify or enhance your equipment beyond regulation specifications will result in immediate disqualification. Rex felt his heart rate increase, but kept his expression neutral. He had spent hours searching for loopholes in the regulations. The wording was specific about modifications to the armor, but said nothing about what happened if the armor was removed entirely after the assessment began. It was a razor-thin technicality, but it was all he had. Prepare yourselves, Kthar commanded. First entrant in 3 minutes. The cadets moved to the preparation area, where technicians helped them perform final checks on their armor. Rex went through the motions, allowing the tech to verify that his suit was functioning correctly, all the while mentally rehearsing his plan. Varkos was among the first to enter the crucible, his massive armored form disappearing into the entrance with confident strides. Other cadets followed at regular intervals, each facing the challenge alone. When Rex's turn came, Kthar's voice stopped him just before he entered. "Cadet Ryder." Rex turned, his helmet concealing his expression. "Sir, the crucible reveals truth, cadet. Remember that." With those enigmatic words, Kthar nodded for him to proceed. Rex stepped into the entrance tunnel, the doors sealing behind him with finality. The urban ruins section greeted him first, a maze of collapsed buildings, overturned vehicles, and narrow passages. In his armor, Rex moved clumsily, just as he had in training. He deliberately allowed himself to be hit by several training drones, each impact registering as a scoring penalty. He struggled through the first section, falling further behind the pace set by previous cadets. As he entered a particularly complex area with multiple levels and tight spaces, Rex checked his surroundings carefully. According to his memorized layout, this was his best opportunity, a section with limited direct camera coverage due to the structural complexity, where multiple paths converged. He waited for a simulated explosion to temporarily obscure visuals, then activated the emergency release mechanism on his armor. The suit split open with a hydraulic hiss, allowing him to step out. Standing in just his basic training unitard, Rex felt vulnerable but gloriously unencumbered. "Cadet Ryder, what are you doing?" Kthar's voice boomed through the communication system. Rex ignored it, knowing that responding would only waste precious seconds. He moved immediately, his natural human agility now unleashed. He sprinted toward a narrow gap that would have been impossible to navigate in armor, slipping through effortlessly and bypassing an entire section of challenges. In the control room, Kthar stared at the monitors in disbelief. "Is this some kind of malfunction? Give me visual confirmation." The technical staff scrambled to adjust cameras, finally capturing clear footage of Rex moving through the course without armor. The room fell silent in shock. "This is a direct violation of protocol," Kthar growled. "Terminate the simulation." "Sir," one of the technicians ventured nervously. "According to Regulation 37B, a crucible challenge can only be terminated in case of life-threatening emergency. Cadet Ryder appears to be in no immediate danger. He's without protective armor in a combat simulation." "Yes, sir, but the safety protocols are active. The simulation drones cannot cause actual physical harm." Kthar's scales darkened with rage, but he knew the technician was right. "Continue monitoring. Document every violation." Meanwhile, in the observation area, cadets who had either completed their run or were waiting their turn watched in stunned silence as the monitors showed Rex moving through the course with unprecedented speed and agility. "Is that the human?" one cadet asked incredulously. "He's not wearing armor," another whispered. "He'll be expelled for sure." Lyra watched with a small smile. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he's showing us something we needed to see." Inside the crucible, Rex was in a state of total focus. Without the armor restricting his movements, he could fully utilize the physical advantages that evolution on a high-gravity death world had given his species. He leaped across gaps that armored cadets had to carefully navigate, climbed structures with the natural strength of his limbs rather than relying on power-assisted joints, and most importantly, moved fast enough to evade most drone attacks rather than absorbing hits. As he entered the synthetic jungle section, he encountered a cluster of advanced combat drones programmed to overwhelm a slow-moving armor target. They attempted to surround him, but Rex's speed made their targeting algorithms nearly useless. He rolled under one drone's attack, used the momentum to spring up behind another, and precisely struck its weak point, a small sensor node he had identified during his research. One by one, he neutralized the drones using their own momentum and programming against them, exploiting weaknesses that would be inaccessible to a cadet restricted by armor. Each successful maneuver built his confidence, and as he progressed through the course at record pace, he began to realize he might actually succeed. In the mountainous final section, Rex faced the greatest challenge, a series of steep climbs and descents combined with aerial drone attacks. Without the armor's enhanced strength, the climbs were punishing, taxing his natural endurance to its limits. Each handhold required careful calculation, each footstep precise placement. Halfway up a particularly challenging ascent, with sweat soaking his unitard and his muscles burning from exertion, Rex heard heavy mechanical footsteps below him. Glancing down, he saw Varkos in full armor, having finally reached this section. The Clack cadet looked up, his compound eyes visibly widening inside his helmet as he registered Rex's armorless form above him. What in the void? Varkos's voice carried through his external speaker. Rex didn't waste breath on a response, focusing instead on reaching the next handhold. A drone swooped in, targeting him with practice rounds. He swung to the side, letting the projectiles hit the rock face, then used a momentary recess in the cliff to launch himself upward, bypassing a difficult section entirely. Varkos watched this display with mandibles slack in astonishment. The human moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible, like gravity itself had different rules for him. Rex reached the summit and the final challenge, a gauntlet of combat drones blocking the finish line. In armor, the standard approach would be to power through, absorbing hits while returning fire. Without armor, Rex had to take a completely different approach. He studied the drone formation for a moment, noting their patterns and blind spots. Then, gathering his remaining strength, he charged, not directly at them, but at an angle that exploited a gap in their coverage. The drones adjusted, but too slowly. Rex slid under the first volley of practice fire, rolled to his feet, and zigzagged through their midst. One drone managed to tag him with a glancing hit, registering a minor penalty, but he was through the formation before they could reacquire him as a target. With a final burst of speed, Rex crossed the finish line, the system automatically recording his completion. He stood there, breathing hard, his unitard soaked with sweat, as the completion signal echoed through the arena. The timer displayed above the finish line showed his final time, a full 20% faster than the previous record. Silence reigned, both in the control room and the observation area. Then, hesitantly at first, but quickly growing, applause began among the watching cadets. Even those who had previously mocked Rex couldn't deny the extraordinary display of skill they had just witnessed. In the control room, Kthar sat rigid, his expression unreadable. The technical staff exchanged uncertain glances, awaiting instructions. Record shows Cadet Ryder completed all required objectives. One technician finally reported. Despite the unorthodox approach, the system has assigned a score. What is it? Kthar asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Highest of the current class, sir. Even with penalties for armor violations, his speed and effectiveness ratings were. I can read. Kthar cut him off, staring at the display. After a long moment, he stood. Continue with the remaining cadets. I will deal with Cadet Ryder personally. Rex was escorted directly from the Crucible exit to an empty briefing room. His elation at his performance was tempered by the knowledge that he had directly challenged Academy protocol. Expulsion was not just possible, but likely. After 30 minutes of waiting, the door opened and Kthar entered, followed by Dr. Thorne and two other senior Academy officials Rex didn't recognize. Cadet Ryder. Kthar began, his tone coldly formal. You deliberately violated explicit instructions regarding the use of standard combat armor in the Crucible assessment. Rex stood at attention. Yes, sir. Explain yourself. Rex took a deep breath. Sir, the standard armor negates the natural advantages my species evolved over millennia on a high-gravity death world. It turns our strengths into weaknesses. I believe the spirit of the Crucible is to test a cadet's ability to overcome obstacles using all available resources. My most valuable resource is my human physiology, which the armor renders useless. The regulations exist for consistency and fairness. One of the officials objected. With respect, sir, there is nothing fair about forcing different species to use equipment that disproportionately disadvantages some while advantaging others, Rex countered. True fairness would be allowing each species to utilize their natural abilities to their fullest potential. Dr. Thorne's expression remained neutral, but Rex thought he detected a hint of approval in the older man's eyes. You could have raised these concerns through proper channels, Thar said. I tried, sir. My previous performance assessments included notes about the armor's limitations for human physiology. Those notes were dismissed as excuses for underperformance. An uncomfortable silence followed. The officials exchanged glances. Regardless of your reasoning, Cadet Ryder, you violated direct orders, Thar finally said. Such actions cannot go without consequence. Understand, sir. However, Thar continued, surprising Rex. Your performance today demonstrated exceptional skill, adaptability, and tactical thinking, qualities the Academy seeks to foster. His reptilian features remained stern, but his tone had shifted slightly. The Leadership Council will need to deliberate on this matter. Until then, Dr. Thorne added, you will continue your regular duties, Cadet. After they left, Rex remained standing in the briefing room, trying to process what had just happened. He had expected immediate expulsion. Instead, he had been given, what? Hope. A chance? He wasn't sure. Word of Rex's unconventional crucible run spread through the Academy like wildfire. In the days that followed, he found himself the center of attention, sometimes admiring, sometimes critical, but never again dismissed. Lyra caught up with him in a corridor between classes. You did it, she said simply. And spectacularly, I might add. I might still be expelled, Rex reminded her. Maybe, she conceded, but you've already changed things. Haven't you noticed? She gestured toward a nearby training room, where a group of cadets from various species were practicing combat maneuvers without armor, focusing on their natural abilities. Among them, surprisingly, was Gron, moving with unexpected grace for his bulk. Even more surprising was Varkos, standing at the edge of the group, mandibles clicking thoughtfully as he observed. When he noticed Rex looking, he gave what might have been a nod of reluctant respect. A week after the Crucible, Rex was summoned to the Leadership Council chamber. He entered to find Thar, Dr. Thorne, and the Academy's highest-ranking officials seated in a semicircle. Cadet Ryder, the Academy commander, an elderly Talari with luminescent skin markings denoting high rank, addressed him. We have reviewed your Crucible performance and the unique circumstances surrounding it. We have also consulted with experts in xenobiology, combat tactics, and Alliance military history. Rex stood at rigid attention, preparing himself for the worst. Your actions violated Academy protocol, the commander continued. This cannot be overlooked. Therefore, you will receive a formal reprimand in your permanent record. Rex nodded slightly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. However, the commander's tone shifted. Your performance has also prompted a valuable reassessment of our training methodologies. The Alliance was founded on the principle that diversity strengthens us. Yet our training has not always reflected this wisdom. Another council member, a Vesperin with delicate, insectoid features, spoke next. Effective immediately, the Academy will establish a research group to evaluate our combat training programs, with emphasis on species-adaptive methodologies. We would like you to serve as an advisor to this group, specifically regarding human combat adaptations. Rex blinked in surprise. I would be honored, sir. This does not excuse your violation of protocol, Thar interjected, his voice still stern but lacking its earlier hostility. But it does acknowledge that sometimes progress requires us to question established practices. Dr. Thorne smiled slightly. The history of the Alliance is one of adaptation, Cadet Ryder. You've reminded us of that important truth. 2 months later, the Academy training facilities had undergone significant changes. While standard armor training remained a core component, specialized tracks have been established focusing on species-specific combat advantages. Rex found himself not just participating in his own training, but occasionally instructing others on human mobility techniques. One evening, as he was demonstrating a particularly challenging evasive maneuver to a small group that included Lyra, Gron, and, most surprisingly, Varkos, Thar entered the training room. The cadets immediately stood at attention, but Kthar waved them back to their activities. He observed for several minutes before approaching Rex. "Your technique has applications beyond humans," he noted, watching as a Xylotian cadet attempted the maneuver. "Many lighter species could benefit from this approach." "Thank you, sir," Rex replied. "I've been adapting it based on different anatomies." Kthar was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "The Alliance faces adaptive threats, Cadet Rider. We cannot afford to be rigid in our thinking." He fixed Rex with a penetrating gaze. "Your actions in the Crucible were insubordinate, reckless, and potentially dangerous." Rex tensed, waiting for the criticism he still occasionally received from more traditional instructors. But Kthar surprised him. They were also precisely what this institution needed. Sometimes the most valuable lesson comes from those willing to challenge convention. With a formal nod that somehow conveyed newfound respect, the instructor departed. Later, as Rex was leaving the training room, he found Varkos waiting in the corridor. The clack shifted uncomfortably. "Your technique today, the side evasion. Show me again." Rex raised an eyebrow, but demonstrated the move. Varkos studied it carefully. "I modified my armor. Reduced mass in key joints. With these adjustments, I might incorporate some of your methods." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Varkos, it was an extraordinary concession. Rex nodded. "We could work on adaptations for clack physiology. Your exoskeleton gives you different advantages we could exploit." "Tomorrow, then," Varkos said gruffly, before clicking his mandibles in what Rex had learned was a gesture of begrudging respect. As Rex headed back to his quarters, he passed a new group of first-year cadets touring the facility. They stopped and whispered as he walked by. His reputation now preceded him. The Deathworlder style, as it had come to be called, was becoming something of a legend in the academy. In his room, Rex found a notification on his terminal. His performance evaluations had been updated. Where once he had been ranked near the bottom of his class in combat readiness, he now stood in the top percentile. More significantly, he had been recommended for advanced tactical leadership training, a path that could eventually lead to command positions. He smiled to himself, remembering the day he'd arrived at the academy, uncertain whether a human could truly find a place in the interstellar community. Now he knew the answer. Humans didn't just have a place. They had the potential to transform the Alliance for the better, bringing their unique adaptability to a civilization that desperately needed fresh perspectives. Outside his window, the distant stars shimmered, each one potentially holding worlds where different species had evolved different strengths. The true power of the Alliance, Rex now understood, lay not in forcing everyone into the same armor, but in learning to combine their diverse abilities into something greater than the sum of its parts. And it had all started with the courage to shed his armor and show the galaxy what a Deathworlder could really do.